Hello, I'm Andrew Martin and welcome to this new 60 minutes video where I'm going to recommend a practical weapon for white against 1e4, e5. The weapon starts with the following moves: e4, e5, white plays knight f3, black knight c6, bishop c4, knight f6, the two knights defence, and now white opens the centre immediately with d4. Rather an old-fashioned move, but as we're going to see, this old-fashioned approach can have many practical advantages in the modern day. Among grandmasters, perhaps Yevgeny Sveshnikov has been the most enthusiastic proponent of this idea, and of course this system, or something very close to it, received a massive shot in the arm when Magnus Carlsen used it to beat the Indian grandmaster Hari Krishna in the Vikings A group of 2013. And the idea is that when black takes, as he probably must, white's going to go through with e5. This is the modern variation, the so-called modern variation, and I think improves really after upon castles. I mean, that was the old line where basically black can take on e4 or go into the Max Langer. With e5, white is forcing the pace. It's very much a forcing variation. Now, before we go on, it's worthwhile pointing out, just dropping back to knight c6, that white can't get what he wants from a Scotch move order. I've seen some players trying to get this system via the move order 3d4. The main reason is, of course, that black doesn't have to play knight f6 in this position. And if you play this way around, which is basically the Scotch gambit, you've got to account for moves like bishop c5 here, or even bishop b4 check. And I don't think we want to allow these tricky lines. So if you want to play this system, you've got to go in via the Italian game, and we conveniently reach this mainline position. After which black has three moves. Now, by far the most commonly played move here is pawn up to d5. A very confident advance by black in the centre. And of course this move is based upon the idea that if white takes on f6, black will just take on c4. And now white doesn't really have a very good move in this situation. I mean, just taking on g7 speeds up black's development. If white goes queen e2 check, then black easily answers that with bishop e6, and otherwise black's just threatening to take on f6. So white after d5 has got to go bishop b5, and then we reach the mainline position when black sticks his knight in on e4 and white goes knight takes d4, which puts the pressure on the c6 square. It's a question of taste, whether you choose d5 or going back to e5. The other moves here, which are either knight to e4, that's a move, it looks a bit odd, but it's a move a lot of strong players play when they want to complicate the issue. They're not satisfied with the positions that black gets after d5, and they just want to spice things up. But objectively, I'm doubtful whether knight e4 is as good as d5. And the other move here is knight to g4. Again, that's a very old-fashioned variation, and we're going to see some interesting lines against it. Black puts the pressure on e5 to be sure, but there's a very real danger here that that black knight could remain sidelined in the upcoming play. Certainly a variation white should avoid is the tricky bishop takes f7 check. These sorts of positions tend to rebound on white. It looks fantastic for white, you know, at this point in time, but black can easily defend against white's threats, and white can suddenly find that both his developed pieces are going to be pushed back. Black should be happy if white plays this variation. So there are three things for white to consider here, and the first line we're going to look at is the main line with d5. Bishop b5, knight e4, knight takes d4. And my first game is a very good one because it highlights a lot of the main ideas in this system. It comes from a tournament played in Germany in 2010 between Dieter Pirot, who's grades 2403, so I assume he's an international master, and he's playing the very strong grandmaster Alexander Graf. This game will undoubtedly show that this is just not a bunny bashing system. This is a system which can be used confidently against grandmasters, and as you'll see, can achieve very good results. Well, black played bishop d7. I mean, black can also play bishop c5, and we're going to see an example of that in a moment. Bishop d7, white takes on c6, laming black's pawns, and then castling. This is the start of what I would classify as the main line. And firstly and foremostly, we should take a look at the pawn structure in this position in order to understand what's going on. Now white has very nicely established a pawn majority in the centre and on the king side. And this pawn majority can form the basis of a lot of white winning ideas in this variation. Either white can somehow reach a good endgame by advancing these pawns, or, and this quite often happens and will happen in our featured game, white gets a massive kingside attack. And the way he does this is to hit the knight en route, f4, f5, and then get after black's king. Because once the black pawns are doubled on the queen side, it's very unlikely that black's going to avoid castling short. So this mechanism of pushing the kingside pawns up is a very common one in this line. And Pirot will show us how it's done. Well, Graf played a modest move now, bishop to e7, lying back on the ropes. White played f3, and black played knight c5. I mean, I think that was probably the reason he didn't put his bishop on c5 on the last move. He wanted to keep that square vacant for the knight. But knight c5, that's not the greatest square for the knight, so Pirot just got on with the job here. He played his pawn up to f4. Black put his knight in back on e4, and now white played a very interesting move here, knight to c3. A paradoxical move in some ways, because white's allowing black to double the pawns on the queen side. But having mentioned the white pawn majority, it's now important to mention the black pawn majority on the queen side. And this is not the same at all. The problem is that black has 4 pawns to 3 on the queen side in the centre, but he can't create a passed pawn using his majority. Despite the fact that both sides have got a pair of double pawns on the queen side, black can't get a passed pawn there. So endgames are often very, very bad for black because of this feature of the position. It's not all doom and gloom for black though. I think when you play this variation with white, you've got to respect the black bishop pair. That's one trump that black can bring to bear on the position. You've got to respect and watch out for the move c5. White can be pushed back if black times this at the right moment. And you've also got to be aware that rook b8 can be a very useful move for black in this system, activating the rook and thereby gaining counterplay as a result. But as we'll see, it's not easy for black to juggle all these responsibilities. Now Graf played a very natural move here, c5, trying to drive the knight back, and having driven the knight back, he castled. But now Pirot gets right on with the job by playing f5, already setting up dangerous threats. Now I must admit, when I first saw this game, I thought to myself that black had just blundered, because why can't white take that pawn? But it turns out that that's a kind of cunning trap that Graf has set, and after bishop f5, it's hard for white to keep his extra pawn. And when black gets the chance to chomp on c2, the light square bishop is going to become a very powerful piece. And certainly white doesn't want to go queen b3. I mean, that is just a very passive move here. Black can start with rook b8. And black has a very serious initiative in this position. So white would probably be best to avoid that. If you play this line, it's as well to look out for ways to start the kingside attack, and f5 is such a way. Well, Graf played rook e8. I mean, it's worthwhile mentioning Graf's a very strong grandmaster, 2600 plus. The point of rook e8 is to drop away with this bishop at the right moment and create some counterplay against the white pawns. Rook e8 attempts to take the sting out of any advance of those pawns. Nevertheless, I think probably bishop b5 was a better move, after which white should probably unpin and we just get an unclear position. I like white, but black might be in the game with that strong light square bishop. White's got definite attacking chances on the king side. So rook e8 returning to the game, and now white plays a4. Again, in order to understand that move, we have to take a look at queen takes d5 in this position, and I think there black plays now bishop to b5. This is an interesting move, and it shows a tactical point behind the move rook e8, as after queen e4, black has the excellent move here, bishop f6. With this move, black brings his position to life, and black's play hinges on a tactic. If white plays bishop f4, black's going to take this, temporarily sacrificing the piece, and now regaining the piece by virtue of a pin. So a4 by Pirro, well observed move, and I think now finally black is threatened by queen takes d5. So that's why Graf plays bishop c8, protecting his pawn. Now white builds up very nicely against the king side. Knight comes to g3, making room for the bishop to come out, and then the queen. Very typical build-up in this line. Rook b8. I did mention that move earlier. You'd think that the rook was coming to the b file to create some pressure, maybe with the idea of rook b2, but I think the main idea of rook b8 is to be able to play rook b6, and that is a very useful square for the black rook, in the sense that black can defend along the third rank. Just dropping back to queen g4 for a moment, king h8 is also definitely another candidate move here. Just moving out of the way of a move like f6, should that ever be possible. But even there, I think rook a1 is good. White can sack this pawn on a4 in the interests of a massive kingside attack. And I just don't like to be black in this position. All of the white pieces are converging on the king. It's very easy for black to be splattered right away with a sequence like this. Bishop attacks the rook on f1, rook comes up to join the party, queen gobbles on c2, and now bishop h6, with tremendous and winning pressure, as g takes h6 is answered by rook g3. Again, a very typical attack coming out of the position. So rook b8 as played, rook a e1, and Graf did play rook b6. Now a very cunning move by Pirro, h3. I think the main point of that is to protect his queen. A necessary prelude to attacking with moves like e6 and or f6. Graf seems blissfully unaware of what's going on here and takes on a4. Well, he's going to regret that move. Again, if he plays king h8, a5, rook a6, keeping the rook active, bishop d2 and queen b5, trying to go active, the fact that queen is drifting away from the king side makes all the difference here. And knight h5 again gives white a tremendous attack. Again, I wouldn't want to be black. I mean, maybe black can defend himself by bringing the queen back, but all that does is highlight that black's idea of bringing the queen out was a mistake in the first place. Queen e7 protecting the bishop, bishop g5, and then knight f4. White has got a tremendous attacking position. But queen takes a4 in the game fails to a very thematic idea, and one which shows the power of this kingside pawn majority. Pirro hits with e6, he hits with f6, and now I think black is toast. White's just got too many threats. Black tried e5 in the game. Looks good at first sight because it's a double attack on the bishop and queen, but the point of the idea is f7. And I think this move just wins. King takes f7, bishop takes e5 check, and now white can win this position as he pleases. Let's not forget, the queen's attacked, so he can take the queen, but after king g8, we can go rook takes f7 check. That's the best move, forcing mate, and bringing this excellent opening game to a conclusion. So there we are. We saw in that game one of the main traps of this line, the kingside pawn majority, which Pirro used to such good effect.